Hello everyone, this is part 10 of What If Naruto Found His Soulmate, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist. To see more, comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. They looked at each other, and gasped. Hinata, you look, he started to mumble. She looked at him wide-eyed too, but the shock was soon replaced on their faces with pure joy. The same. He added and hugged her tightly, and she returned the gesture. A single tear went down her cheek. We made it, she whispered. Yep, that was a damn close call. I nearly fell on a different one. You two are lucky, you know. Only a day has passed from when we were locked up, the demon said and rolled his eyes. They both nodded. Yeah, we have that, Naruto said, wiping a tear from the girl's pale cheek with his thumb. Okay kids, back to work. We've got some traitors to catch, QB said, and the teens nodded. Let's kick some ass, Naruto said, and they were off. Hiashi stared at his daughter's picture that he had on his office desk. She was gone for a day and he already missed her. Flashback. Chika entered Hiashi's office after granted entrance. She slowly walked towards him, her head hanging down as if in sorrow. What is it, Chika? I've got work to do, Hiashi said, looking up at her from his paperwork. Chika sighed. Hiashi, I've got some disturbing news, she said. Hiashi raised an eyebrow. Out with it, he commanded. Chika sighed again. Hiashi, I've got a report from one of my men. I thought it would be best for you to know, she said, and reached under her robe to grab a scroll. She gave it to Hiashi, who opened it and began reading. Chika had to lower her head again to hide the smirk that plastered her face. Hiashi's eyes went wide, and he crushed the paper in his hands. Get out, now, he commanded. She bowed lightly and left the room, her smirk now evident on her face, though Hiashi didn't see it. End flashback. He couldn't believe it. The report wrote that Hinata and Naruto were spotted outside Konoha, fighting with a huge group of hostile ninjas. Naruto seemed to release his QB power and killed everyone, including his daughter. He then SD from severe injuries. There were no corpses left instead of Naruto's. The men had burned the corpse in order to dispose Konoha of his stench once and for all. Hiashi had trusted him, believed him, and he was fooled. Naruto and Hinata had now reached the gates of the compound. It was dark and late in the night, so no one had seen them. He looked at her for one last time, and she nodded in agreement. Naruto knocked the gates. The guard on duty was rather sleepy. He heard a knock on the door. He groaned and swore inwardly. Who the hell could it be this late? Opening the door slowly, he gasped. Oh my god, I fell asleep again. The guard asked himself and shook his head while placing his palm on his forehead. Nope, you're as awake as me, Naruto said, throwing a grin and pointing himself with his thumb. The guard looked at him again. Sorry, I can't believe it. I must be asleep, since you two are he said, pointing a finger at them. Hinata giggled and Naruto chuckled. So, they lost no time, he said. He looked back at the guard, a mischievous grin on his face now. The guard gulped. The dream had just become a nightmare. With a good punch in the face, the guard was crushed on the opposite wall. I think that's real enough to wake you up, Naruto said, grinning widely. Hinata giggled. Naruto-kun, you shouldn't punch him so hard, she said, looking at the now collapsed guard worriedly. Nah, don't worry, he'll be fine, he said, and walked in the mansion, her following suit. The mansion was rather typical. White walls, wooden floor, doors here and there. So, Hinata-chan, where's your father's room? Naruto asked curiously. Hinata lifted her hand on her chin. Anno. I'm not sure, she said. Use your Byakugan then, he said cheerfully, and she nodded. Whispering, Byakugan, she started scanning the mansion for her father. She smiled. He's at his office, she said softly, and he nodded. When they reached the office, she knocked the door. She heard her father's usually serious voice have a speck of sadness in it when he gave permission for entrance. She slowly slid the door open. Her father was looking at the opposite side towards the wall, holding something that looked like a picture in his hands. Oh, Otu-san, she asked softly. He stiffened for a moment. Hinata? He asked in disbelief. He slowly turned around, and his eyes went wide at the sight before him. Hinata was there, with Naruto grinning widely next to her. What the, you, were s. Hiashi said. It wasn't smart, but his mind was dazed to think clearly now. We're not SO2-san. She began to say, but Naruto cut her. We were trapped by one of your clan members. It seems you have more than one traitors in here, Hiashi. And if you don't believe we are real, go ask the guard at the door. He'll confirm it, Naruto said, and Hiashi's eyes went wide in realization. He frowned. Very well, Uzumaki-san. I think I've got an idea of who she is, Hiashi said and looked down again. He hid the picture he held before in his drawer. Let's go, he said, and the teens nodded. Jika was sitting in the mansion's meeting room. Along with her were several other elders. So, our heiress is gone. I am truthfully sorry, but my men ensure me of the demise. As horrible as it is, I didn't believe them myself at first. When I went at the site of the battle, the only thing I found from the heiress was a patch of her jacket and a blue tie 8, she said and looked down as if in sorrow. The elders nodded and looked down themselves. The door then burst open. Then we'd like the tie 8 back. You can keep the cloth, said a voice from the direction of the door. All the elders looked at the door in surprise. There, in front of them, stood a grinning Naruto, a smiling Hinata, and a very pissed Hiashi. Jika, I heard everything you said and I take them as confession to your guild in the betrayal of our clan. You are hereby sentenced to death, Hiashi said, piercing glares at her. She immediately stood up. Like I'll let you fools get me. She said, and in a flash, she was in front of Hiashi. With a strike at the head, he was unconscious. In another moment, Hinata was thrown unconscious too. Naruto prepared his Kyuubi chakra, but this time, to his horror, it wouldn't come. He felt his body numb, really numb, like he could do nothing at all. Jika turned to look at him, an evil grin on her face. She raised her hand, and the chakra concentrated in it was clearly visible. Naruto's eyes went wide. Was this the end? Would everything end here? In a matter of another second, the whole world went black. Naruto sat up on his bed, breathing heavily and his eyes gone wide. He looked around his room. It was dark, the shadows of the moon making the objects around him barely visible. He groaned. What a dream. He saw he found a girl, the girl loved him and he loved her back. He remembered something about soulmates, about a seal, about different worlds, but this was like crazy. He was still 13 years old. And this was the weirdest dream he ever saw. He just shrugged it off and leaned on his bed again, trying to sleep. Tomorrow, he would go check on Sasuke. After the Chunin exams, Sasuke was hospitalized immediately. This dream, it seemed kind of real. Though he couldn't remember much of it. Hell, he couldn't even remember the girl. He wished he could though. Shrugging all these thoughts off, he let himself fall in a now dreamless sleep. Somewhere in the back of Naruto's and Hinata's mind. Kyuubi was rolling here and there, trying to find an opening in the mind shell. Damn, this time Rift S, he swore to himself. Soon, he started hitting the walls with his body. Damn it. If the kids don't remember a thing, what the hell is the girl going to do? She can't control all of it yet. He thought to himself and began struggling for freedom once more. In Hinata's room, at the Hyuga mansion. Hinata gasped as she sat up quickly on her bed. What was that? She had some sweat around her forehead and her vision was a little blurry. She calmed herself down and looked around the room. It was her room, in the Hyuga mansion. Taking a glance at her mirror, she gasped again. My hair is short, she thought as she raised her hands to touch her hair, wanting to see if it was real. What had happened? Had all this been a dream? She remembered Naruto, what they had done together. She remembered a seal, a bond. She remembered some kind of prison from where they escaped. The last thing she remembered was a flash as they held each other between the dimensions and time. But was all this a dream? Right now, she was in her bed, and Naruto was nowhere to be seen. She got up from her bed a little depressed. She wished what she had seen wasn't a dream. She walked over to her bathroom to take a look at herself, and gasped. Naruto got up from his bed this morning cheerfully preparing for his day. He took a quick bath and went over his dressed for one of his usual orange-blue jumpsuits. He dressed up and went to the kitchen to prepare some ramen. As the water boiled, he had nothing to do than think. That dream, it seemed so real, he felt so empty right now, as if something big was missing. That girl, long ink blue hair, and this eyes, he could swear he hadn't seen anything more beautiful his whole life. Pale lavender, he wished he could remember who she was though, out ofn Naruto's memory capabilities are lol. Hinata couldn't believe what she saw. It was like in her dream, but it was real. Between the area of her shoulder and left B, slightly under her N, was a seal. It had the head of a fox and 9 tails swirling around it. What did that mean? Was it really a dream? If it was, then from where the hell did this seal come? She needed answers, but she could get them later on. For now, she entered her bath for a nice hot shower. Naruto went straight to the Konoha hospital, wanting to pay a visit at the sleeping Sasuke. He ignored like always the glares of hate from the villagers, and rushed in the building. The nurse on duty informed him where Sasuke was and he immediately ran there. Opening the door, he saw exactly what he expected. Sakura sitting next to him, holding his hand, while he lied there emotionlessly in a somewhat peaceful slumber. He walked towards them. Any change? He asked. It was then that Sakura did notice Naruto had entered and nearly jumped when he spoke. She relaxed quickly though. No, she said, and looked down sadly at Sasuke's sleeping form once more. Well, that team better get well soon. I have his ass to kick. Naruto shouted, and in a second, he was found crushed on the hospital wall. Naruto, you barker. Shut up, we're in a hospital. Sakura said, trying not to shout. He managed to get up and rub the back of his head. Sorry, he said, though apology wasn't visible in his words. Anyway, I'll come again later. He shouted again and he was off, before Sakura could land another punch on his face, of course. Hinata got downstairs at the kitchen, wanting to prepare some breakfast. As the food was cooked, she tried to remember more of her dream. It was becoming clearer and clearer, but she couldn't get all of it. She remembered sleeping in Naruto's apartment, with him. She remembered kissing him, hugging him. But her mind was a mess, she couldn't really place them in an order. She heard then a rumble at the back of her mind. Kyubi kept singing on the wall, finally. Thank God that girl is smarter than the kit. He thought as the wall on the one side started to break. Soon, with another S, the wall was down. Hinata stared wide-eyed into nothing as the rumbles in her mind continued, till everything stopped. Finally out, a deep, dark voice said, and she gasped. She turned around to look at the room, but no one was there. Kit, look inside ye, the voice said again. She nodded to no one in particular and closed her eyes, trying to concentrate. Suddenly, a pair of blood-red eyes with S pupils appeared in the darkness. Under them was a series of long, sly teeth, forming what seemed to be a wide evil grin. She quickly opened her eyes with a gasp. Come on, don't tell me you're afraid of me now, you're breaking my heart, he said and started chuckling. Hinata kept staring wide-eyed though. Kyubi, she whispered in disbelief, bingo. 2-2. You really are smarter than the kit, aren't ye? He said and continued chuckling. What do you mean, 2-2? She asked in a whisper. The demon rolled his eyes. It's the second time you recognize me when you practically don't know me. Though I was in your mind for around 3 days now, he said and began chuckling again. Playing with one's mind was fun. Second time. When have I seen you before? She asked again in disbelief. Damn time rift, I knew I couldn't get it all right, she heard the demon mumbling practically to himself. Something clicked then. All the memories rushed back in her mind like a whirlwind. The battle with Akatsuki, her supposed marriage with Kakari, their confession, the time until Kakari's death, and finally, the dimension time rift trap. Wow, that's a big flashback, Kyubi said and chuckled. Hinata was staring wide-eyed into nothing. So, it wasn't a dream. It was real. But, how? Why? What? Simple. When we escaped the prison, I managed to land us on our dimension. Too bad I didn't manage to land us on the right time. He said, and Hinata was shot out of her trance. What do you mean, Kyubi-kun? She asked as she took the food off the cook and placed it on the table. Well, I didn't guarantee anything, girl. It looks like a part of your mind was trapped somehow, along with me. The only reason I managed to talk to you is that you managed to remember enough things for me to break the shell. Well done. Kyubi said, and Hinata smiled, but it was quickly replaced by a sad expression. What about Naruto-kun? Does he remember? She asked softly. Kyubi sighed. Yeah, he remembers some things, but not much. He doesn't remember you. Until he remembers, his full memory won't come back. Till then, we are stuck in the past, he said, and Hinata gasped. Why, you mean we can even go back? She asked softly again, and she could feel the demon nodding. Yes. I have a technique for this. Though sadly, it is one use. You can't use it twice, and it requires a lot of power. You have to find the kit and make him remember. When he does, your Kyubi powers combined with mine will complete the jutsu with success. I could do it on my own, but it is most likely that we will land a few hundred years forward, he said and chuckled. Hinata nodded. What to do today? Make Naruto remember, even by force. Out OFN today, my dear readers. It's a humor chapter. Naruto was walking aimlessly the streets. He could go train, but Jiraiya wasn't around. So, he just walked around hoping to find something interesting. After an hour or so of only walking, his eye was caught by a familiar sight. At the left side of the street at a store, stood Shikamaru along with Chuji. Walking closer, he realized the shop was a bakery, with cakes, many cakes. Chuji was staring wide-eyed at the flavors of cakes while Shikamaru lazily rubbed the back of his head and looked at the clouds. Naruto grinned while he walked closer. Hey guys, he shouted, and that seemed to catch at least Shikamaru's attention. Shikamaru turned around to look at him. Yo, he replied lazily as ever. Chuji just kept staring at the cakes. So, what's up? Naruto asked, grinning widely as ever. What do you mean? It's just another troublesome day in Konoha, Shikamaru said, shrugging and looking back at the clouds. Naruto then took a glance at Chuji. Why's Chuji only looking at the cakes? Can't he buy one or something? He asked, pointing a finger at the drooling Chuji. He can. It's just that from the moment he saw them, he's just staring and drooling. It's too troublesome to get him off, so I'm just waiting, Shikamaru said, shrugging again. Naruto chuckled. I've got an idea, he said with an evil grin. Shikamaru's eyes went wide. No, you couldn't, he said in disbelief, his eyes emitting fear. Naruto kept his evil grin though, as he slowly approached Chuji. Chuji was clueless to the world around him. To him, the only thing existing was he and the cakes behind the glass wall of the shop. Suddenly, a voice from behind him whispered, I heard they are closing barbecue, Chuji's favorite shop. The owner said that you finished all their food, the voice said, and Chuji's heart skipped a beat. No was screamed all across Konoha. Hinata turned to look at the source of the scream. Naruto-kun is playing with Chuji again, she whispered and sighed. Looking up, she began running towards the direction of the sound. Naruto had done the same thing many times, now at the age of 13 and in the future at the age of 16 to 17. Chuji always fell for it for unknown reasons. I should know. I ate too much. Damn me. Damn me. That's why they didn't have dessert last time. That's why. Why must the world be so cruel? Chuji shouted, punching the ground with his fists and crying waterfalls. Naruto, in the meantime, was rolling on the floor laughing. Chuji, you fall for it every single time, how troublesome. Said an annoyed Shikamaru. It isn't true. Chuji asked in disbelief. Shikamaru nodded, of course it isn't. Naruto always pulls this prank on you and you always fall for it. Why? He asked, curious as to why his food-loving friend fell for such a prank every single time. Not your concern, Chuji said, turning around and crossing his hands over his chest. Shikamaru turned around himself mumbling a troublesome. At that moment, Hinata arrived at the scene. Hi, Shikamaru-san, Chuji-san, she said gently. Shikamaru turned to look at her mumbling another, troublesome. Hi there, Hinata. Why in such a hurry? He asked. Hinata looked down at the ground. Well, I need to tell Naruto-kun something, she said softly, and Shikamaru raised an eyebrow. He shrugged. Oh well, it's troublesome, but I'll tell you, he went this way, he said, pointing towards the training areas. Hinata nodded and left as fast as she arrived. Shikamaru sighed and turned around to look at Chuji. What? Let's go buy a cake. I'm hungry, Chuji said cheerfully as if nothing had happened. Oh well, Naruto did the job for me, Shikamaru mumbled. Chuji, of course, didn't hear him for he had already entered the store. As Naruto ran towards the training areas, he felt something strange aching on his shoulder. He ignored it as he arrived and found no others than Lee, Tenten and Neji, training. "Hey guys, want to spar?" he shouted, waving a hand in the air and grinning widely. Tenten was the one to turn to look at him first since Lee was busy shouting something about youth to Neji, who had leaned on a tree, his arms crossed over his chest, and had an annoyed expression. "Sorry Naruto, we have to train," and she was cut off as Lee sprinted like a whirlwind towards Naruto and grabbed his hand. "Naruto-kun, it will be my honor to be your youthful opponent. Let's see in who the flames of youth burn brighter today," Lee shouted, giving his trademark, and lame, nice guy, pose. "Okay," Naruto said, sweat dropping. Lee was nearly as lame as his sensei, Mato guy. He was like a guy mini clone, but people didn't really mention it. Neji in the meantime, seemed to be somehow interested in the subject, as he turned his head to take a look. Tenten just sat down near a tree and sighed. "Okay Lee, here I come," Naruto shouted when they were ready. Lee entered his usual, lotus, stance while Naruto crossed his fingers in an oh-so-familiar seal. Shouting the name of the technique, a good of 100 Narutos covered the training area. All eyes went wide. "Wait, I didn't want to summon so many," Naruto shouted, and all the clones were looking around at each other in confusion. Tenten and Neji had jumped on a tree to avoid the overwhelming clones. Lee in the meantime had sweat dropped. "No matter Naruto-kun, this is still a match," Lee said and started battling with the clones. Lee was more than surprised. The clones were able to even avoid some of his attacks. This was strange, Naruto never before had such agility. Kicking one of the clones and punching another one, impressive Naruto-kun. "You have become strong," he shouted and kept fighting with the clones. Naruto in the meantime, was preparing Razingans at the back lines. Lee's eyes went wide when he finished all the shadow clones. Behind the clouds of smoke, were at least 5 Narutos, each holding a blue Rasengan in hand. Lee smiled. This could be a challenge. All Narutos charged towards Lee with all their speed. Lee was once more caught off guard as Naruto's speed seemed to have increased much as well. He dodged the first Rasengan and kicked the clone, making him disappear. Leaning at the side, he dodged the second Rasengan and with a round kick, another clone was gone. Jumping in the air, he avoided the third chakra ball and upon landing, he swapped the fourth Naruto off his feet with a low round kick, sending him out of existence with a punch in the stomach afterwards. The 2 remaining Narutos charged from both sides. Lee just jumped out of the way and the 2 Rasengans set into each other, creating a massive white light all over the area. Lee closed his eyes and lifted his hands in front of his face to prevent the light. When it faded, he opened them again, only to see. "So, you give up?" Naruto asked, grinning widely while holding a kunai in front of Lee's en. Lee only smiled. "Impressive Naruto-kun. You have become stronger. The flames of youth burn bright in you today," Lee shouted, punching the air in front of him. Naruto grinned again and withdrew the kunai. Suddenly, Hinata appeared in the scene. "What happened here?" she asked softly while looking at the crater Naruto had made with his Rasengan explosion. Neji shook his head, Tenten sighed, Lee smiled and Naruto was staring wide-eyed. "You," he said, pointing a finger at her. Hinata looked up at him and her face brightened. Did he remember? Was all she had to do make him look at her? All the others were now looking at him too in anticipation. "A Hinata!" Naruto exclaimed happily. Every fell back, anime style. He just rubbed the back of his head and grinned widely. Suddenly, a puff of smoke drove everyone's attention. They turned around to see Lee. "What have I told you about sparring before training? The flames of youth must burn bright, but you must learn how to control them, my dear student," Guy shouted, pumping his fist on top of Lee's head. "I'm sorry, Guy-sensei. I have ashamed you. Forgive me, sensei," Lee pleaded, and Guy's expression softened. "Lee," he began. Lee was crying waterfalls in the meantime while looking in his sensei's eyes. "Guy-sensei. Lee. Guy-sensei. Lee. Guy-sensei." They hug each other as waterfalls of tears were streaming down their eyes. The background changed into a sunset at the beach, and a massive wave hit the rocks behind them, making it sparkle in the orange light. "That's so dramatic," Naruto whispered, pretending a sob, And everyone fell back anime style even once more. You're kidding, right? Tenten asked in disbelief. Everyone, besides Lee and Guy who were still hugging and crying, looked at him in anticipation. I'm not kidding. The amount of lameness in him is reaching dramatic levels. I think I need some ramen, he said while rubbing the back of his head and turned around to leave. Hinata was shot out of her trance as soon as he started walking away. Naruto-kun, she said, and that seemed to catch his attention. He didn't turn around though. Yes, Hinata-chan, he replied, and Hinata's face immediately brightened. He never called her Chan when they were kids. Naruto dodged in the last second a gentle fist strike from Neji. What the hell? He shouted as he turned to look at Neji, who had his Byakugan activated. Naruto thought to himself for many different reasons. Where is Naruto? Neji said, and it sounded more than a demand rather than a question. Naruto chuckled. I thought that people who can see anything with this eyes can also tell if I'm myself, right? He said, pointing himself with his thumb. Neji frowned. Naruto never was strong enough to defeat Lee, and he never called Hinata-sama with a Chan. Neji stated, and slipped in his Juken stance. So, I've just gotten stronger. And what's the problem with calling Hinata Chan? He said, crossing his arms over his chest. Neji turned to look at his cousin. She was just looking at nothing in particular. Neji's eyes caught something strange. Hey, Neji, I'm over here, Naruto shouted, waving a hand at Neji, who turned back to look at him. Look, if it's that bad calling your cousin with a Chan, fine. If you have a problem with me being stronger, then you have a real problem. Naruto said, and his expression was serious. Neji relaxed and deactivated his Byakugan. Very well, Naruto. I shall believe you, for now, he said, and turned around to leave. Naruto grinned widely. Both Neji and Tenten walked back at the now standing up and shouting something about youth, Guy and Lee. So, Hinata-chan, want some ramen? Naruto asked, grinning widely. Hinata nodded with a smile. Hi, she replied. Okay, let's go, he said, and by grabbing her hand, they were off. They sat next to each other at a stool at Ichiraku's ramen stand. Naruto placed his elbows on the counter while waiting for their orders to come. So, how are we going back? He asked, and Hinata gasped. He turned to look at her shocked expression with a wide grin. Why? You remember? She asked in disbelief. He leaned forward and gave her a slight kiss on the lips. That seemed to calm her down. The kid is unpredictable. What did you expect? Kyubi said in their mind while chuckling. Naruto joined him in the chuckle while Hinata sighed. Naruto-kun, when did you remember? She asked, and he stopped chuckling. His expression now changed in a gentle smile. From the moment I saw you, he said, and placed his hand in hers. She held his hand tightly. Then why didn't you tell me from the beginning? She asked curiously. He smiled again. Where's the fun in that? He asked. His smile changed in a wide grin. She could hear both him and Kyubi chuckling in her mind. Naruto-kun, you never change, she said, and giggled. He smiled back. Neither do you. But I love you like you are, he said, smiling that genuine smile again while she blushed and smiled back shyly. They both turned to look at the counter, not wanting to attract attention. They had to act as normally, well as normal as their old selves did, in order to not change the future in any way. The demon had told them that while they were here in the past, anything they did could very well affect the future. That's why they had to keep a low profile until Kyubi had prepared the jutsu. He could tell them what to do when the time came. For now, they should just wander around for a while. After having eaten at the stand, they left to wander around Konoha once more. They tried to avoid attention as much as possible, though they didn't really know if this was good or bad. Wait, Kyubi, can't we change the future for the better? Naruto asked as they walked an empty street. Hinata nodded, wondering the same thing. Aren't you satisfied with your future? You've got a girl, you've saved that Uchiha, your precious Konoha is at peace, you're going to be Hokage, what else do you want? Greedy bastard. Kyubi mumbled the last part to himself. Hinata giggled and Naruto sighed. I mean, couldn't I make things better? Sooner. He asked again, but the demon just sighed. Listen up, Kit. Time and space are two extremely complicated things. The more you play with them, the more complicated they become. So shut up and try to act normal. If you can say that your behavior can be described as normal. Quote. Kyubi mumbled the last part to himself once more, and only Hinata seemed to giggle once more as Naruto was staring forward as if in deep thought. Hinata stopped giggling to look at her future boyfriend. Naruto-kun, Kyubi-kun is right. Changing one little thing here can bring enormous changes in the future, she said, and Naruto nodded in understanding. I guess so, he said and took a deep breath. So furball. How's it going? He asked cheerfully. Kyubi just mumbled something before returning at the back of their mind. So, Kyubi-kun, what will happen when we leave? Hinata asked. The demon emerged again. Nothing in particular. As far as I know, it's your spirits that travel between the worlds. Your body will stay here and your mind will return to the state it was before we interfered. That's why you had some of your memories locked when we arrived. But when we go back, I don't know exactly what will happen. Told you, time and space are complicated, he said, and Hinata, along with Naruto, nodded in understanding. Time and space weren't things to play with. They had reached a park now. Naruto remembered it. It was the same park he, Hinata, Sakura and Sasuke sat the day they went out for dinner and the day Kakarei SD. Though this day was 2 to 3 years forward. They sat on the bench, looking at nothing in particular. Launch time had passed and now most people should be at their homes. The park wasn't at all crowded. In truth, there were only a few people or small groups of friends as it seemed, that lurked around. Naruto kept staring at the clouds, trying to wait patiently for Kyubi to prepare. Hinata in the meantime was thinking to herself. What had already changed? Would it be big? Would it be nothing? What would they encounter back in the future? She knew nothing really had happened, but she couldn't help but worry. No matter though, they had to stop this madness. And she didn't mean the time travel. Hinata gasped and quickly hanged into a girl with brown hair and green eyes. Naruto questioned her move for a moment, but she mentally told him Neji was passing by. Neji, along with Tenten and Lee, gave a curious look at the two, but quickly shrugged it off and walked away. Hinata sighed but kept her changed form. Naruto-kun, we must not be seen together for the time being, at least not from our friends, she said, and he nodded. Hey, furball, how's it going? He asked, and they could hear the demon sighing. Kit, if you stop interrupting me every 5 minutes, I'll be done way faster, he said, clearly annoyed, and drifted back in his work. Both teens sighed. It was going to be a long day. They sat up from the bench and walked down the streets once more, doing nothing in particular. Naruto faintly remembered these days. When Sasuke was at the hospital, he usually went for training until Sasuke defected from the village and he run to get him. After half an hour of doing nothing than walking around, they finally fell on Kiba and Shino. I swear I have seen Shino's face so much, that I can hardly remember it. Single quote. Naruto said, and Hinata giggled. Kiba raised an eyebrow. Oi. Naruto. Got a girlfriend, I see. Kiba said and laughed. Shino's attention seemed to get caught by the subject. A girlfriend? Weren't you interested in Haruno Sakura, Naruto? Shino asked in disbelief. Naruto frowned. First of all, she's just a friend, he said, pointing the girl next to him. Second, yeah, I like Sakura. Happy now, he added. They both shrugged. Kiba turned to Shino. I just wonder how Hinata could react if Naruto had a girlfriend, he whispered to his teammate, but Naruto and Hinata, with their enhanced hearing from the Kyubi's powers, heard every word. Hinata looked down as if reminding herself a painful memory, while Naruto frowned and looked down himself. Right now, the last thing he wanted was to harm her, mentally or physically. They both remembered the scenes they had seen when they were traveling in time, scenes they didn't want to relive, scenes they didn't want to happen. He raised his head to look at her, and smiled her the genuine smile he held only for her eyes to see. She smiled back, that smile he always loved. But it was a little strange to see it on another face. So unique it was. Truth is, Naruto never was so calm and collected around anyone else. He was always hyperactive, loud, self-esteem to inhuman levels. Even with Sakura, he was this loud self of his. But with Hinata, it was something different. He didn't feel the need to shout, bounce around or do impressive things to get her attention, for he always had it. Hinata was impressed herself by Naruto's alternate behavior towards her. But she liked it. She never liked people yelling, not at her at least. Naruto, though, didn't yell nonsense things that had no point. He always had dreams, He always had values, he always had a goal. This things she wanted to have her whole life, this things she admired him for, this things that in time, she loved him for. Naruto was thinking, what did he like on Sakura? Or at least used to. She was pretty, famous around the academy and a good student. These things didn't change all the time he had spent with her, with the exception of her also getting stronger. What he didn't like about Sakura. She was very aggressive against him. Every time he did something stupid, every time he annoyed her even in the slightest, every time he did anything wrong by her opinion, even to hug her, he always earned a punch in the face. What did he like about Hinata? She was collective, she wasn't open-minded, but that wasn't a problem right now, eh? He could hear her thoughts, at least what she wanted him to hear. She was more than beautiful, when she wasn't clothed in her bulky jacket of course, but he didn't really mind. It made her a little mysterious. The day she got it off at the park, he noticed she had a better chest area than he ever imagined. It wasn't too big like Tsunde's, neither was it near flat like Sakura's. He knew such thoughts were a little perverted, but he couldn't help but mention this asset in his mind. She was way more calmer. She didn't punch him when he did something stupid, she didn't start yelling at him that he was an idiot. Now that he thought about it, she had never hurt him, in any possible way. Well, that day that he hanged on the hospital roof and she gave him a strike with her head, well at the time, he thought she was afraid of him or something. It was all cleared when he understood she loved him. Compare it with her shy character, and there you have it. But all in all, Hinata never hurt him. Instead, all that he could remember was her helping him, caring for him. Sakura cared too, but she didn't show it much. So, what did he not like about Hinata? Now that he thought about it, nothing. For him, she didn't have anything negative. She was beautiful, she was a kind spirit, some may even say an angel. Her shyness was a little annoying at times, but he liked it. That blush she always had made her cuter by his opinion, though she didn't blush much lately. Well, her nervousness was a problem, but he didn't mind. She wasn't nervous around him anymore. She wasn't nervous around him for some time now. To tell the truth, she had nearly overcome all her shyness and nervousness from the time they began to spend time together, before they became a couple. Right now, she was way more bolder and way more determined. He couldn't help but be proud. Oi, Naruto, wake up, Kiba said, waving a hand in front of his face. Naruto snapped back in reality, realizing he was lost in a trance for a few minutes now. What? Can't I lose my mind for once? He asked, making an annoyed expression. Kiba chuckled, nope, for you don't have one. He said, and Naruto frowned. He could hear Kyuubi agreeing with Kiba and sighed. Hinata in the meantime, just stared at him, thinking herself. She still found it a little hard to believe she and Naruto were together. She always hoped about it, but it was becoming dangerously painful when she thought about him being with another. The 3 years he left, she was afraid. Afraid he would return with someone else on his side. Afraid he would forget her, and she would be nothing but a shadow of his childhood memories. But this didn't happen. And she couldn't allow it to. She couldn't let anyone take him away, no matter what. For at least once in her life, she was determined to the fullest for one thing. No one would part them. No one would take away her dreams, her hopes. Hopes he also gave her, for she knew now that he didn't have eyes on another. She was relieved every time he kissed her. His kisses were reassurance to this 3 words he had said that spotted night. Words not he, neither she would take back. For that's their Nindo. She shot herself out of her trance, and she looked around her. Naruto was arguing with Kiba about ramen, while Shino was examining a tree for bugs. She sighed in relief. If they were lucky, she wouldn't have to talk. She knew her voice was quite unique, for Naruto had said he loved it. She blushed slightly at this and turned around so they couldn't see her face. Her blushes were unique as well. So, Naruto, have you seen Hinata? We were supposed to meet here. Shino asked seriously when he walked towards the 2 still arguing boys. Naruto shrugged. I think she's sick or something. Or so I heard, not sure, he said, rubbing the back of his head. Hinata smiled. He did stupid things sometimes, but there were times he could surprise everyone. He was, after all, the #1 unpredictable ninja of Konoha. Trying to read him was like trying to read a book that its words were changing all the time. Strange. She was okay last time I saw her, Kiba said, raising his hand on his chin. Well, she might just be late, Naruto added, shrugging. Shino nodded and turned to look for bugs once more. Akamaru then popped out of a corner, barking loudly. Hinata gasped and turned to run away. Akamaru could smell her and jumped to lick her. Kiba knew all too well that she was the only one Akamaru acted like that on. She jumped away at a rooftop and escaped the scenery. Naruto frowned and followed suit after her. Kiba didn't have time to even protest. Akamaru jumped on his master's hands and began barking again. Kiba raised an eyebrow. What? That girl smelled like Hinata. How can that be? Are you sure, Akamaru? You were quite far away and I could smell her too, you know. He said, and Akamaru looked down, as if not sure in his own words. Hinata stopped jumping and sat at the edge of a rooftop, looking down at the empty streets. Naruto landed right next to her. Akamaru-kun could smell me. I had to leave, she explained, and he nodded while sitting next to her. Hey, don't worry. Furball will get us out of here soon enough. Right, he said, and they heard Kyuubi growling at the back of their mind. They both sighed. It's really hard being yourself, eh? He asked and chuckled. She giggled. Hi, she said, and looked down at the streets again. What is it, Hinata-chan? He asked, his voice painted with concern. Naruto-kun. I'm tired, she replied, changing back in her normal form. He raised an eyebrow. Tired of what? He began, but she launched at him and kissed him deeply on the lips. When they parted, she placed her head on his shoulder. Sick of hiding, she whispered, and his eyes went wide. He understood what she meant. He calmed down quickly though, and hugged her tightly. I know, he whispered back and nodded while having placed his own head on her shoulder. At this age, he wasn't taller. Hinata opened her eyes, and gasped. She quickly sat away from him and hanged back in the form she had before. Naruto questioned the move, but she mentally told him to look back at the street. He did and frowned. Why did they have to ruin the moment? Boss! Shouted Konohamaru happily, out of and wondered where the little brat was, smiley face, Mogi and Udon following behind. Naruto faked a smile and waved a hand at them. He liked this kids, but sometimes, they could be a real headache. Hey boss, is she your girlfriend? Konohamaru asked, pointing a finger at the hanged Hinata. Mogi giggled while Udon stared blankly. Naruto blushed slightly. No. I don't have a girlfriend. Damn it, why must everyone that sees me with a girl think that she's my girlfriend? He asked practically to himself while rubbing the back of his head. He could hear Hinata giggling mentally. Geez, boss, you need a girlfriend, Konohamaru said once more. Naruto sighed and looked down at the three kids. He and Hinata were still on the rooftop while the kids were down at the road, looking up at them. I guess so, he said and looked up at the clouds, though I have one already, he whispered and smiled. Hinata smiled as well. What? Konohamaru shouted, placing his hand behind his ear. I can't hear you, boss. He said. Naruto sighed. He opened his mouth to say something, but then. The kids turned around and their eyes were filled with horror. Down the street was coming Ebisu, their sensei. Damn it. Konohamaru corpse. Retreat plan B. Konohamaru shouted and they quickly started running at the opposite direction from their teacher. Ebisu though saw them and started shouting something Naruto and Hinata couldn't really catch. Ebisu then started running towards his fleeting students. Naruto chuckled. I really missed this, he whispered, and Hinata leaned closer, allowing her head to lie on his shoulder, and let out a sigh. She had already missed his warmth, even if they weren't apart for more than a day. He hugged her back, keeping her closer. You know, I wish some things could be changed, he whispered. She placed her hand in his lap. Naruto-kun, you can't change the past, but you can make a better future, she said and kissed him on the cheek, making him blush slightly. He always felt embarrassed when she said something cleverer, but even so, it was one of the things he loved about her. Guess you're right, but couldn't we stay here and make the future even better? He said, question evident in his voice. She sighed. Naruto-kun, our future is alright as it is. Some things just need to happen. If Sasuke-san hadn't went with Orochimaru, then he wouldn't become strong enough to defeat Itachi. If you hadn't left for 3 years, she trailed off and he placed his free hand over the one she had on his lap. You wouldn't be stronger. If Sakura-san wasn't heartbroken with Sasuke-san's defection, she wouldn't find the determination to become what she is now, she said, raising her head from his shoulder and smiling reassuringly. He smiled back. If you weren't a shy, timid, dark girl, you wouldn't be a weirdo, he said, grinning widely now, but she blushed at his words. Was it an insult or something? But I told you, I like people like you, he said, tightening his grip on her hand. But I don't like you, he said, and she looked at him questioningly. He chuckled. I love you, he said, and kissed her on the lips. She blushed but returned the kiss. When they broke apart, his grin had returned. QB's right. Sometimes, you aren't that smart, he said, and earned a pout from her. You aren't smart all the time, Naruto-kun, she said and giggled. It was his turn to pout. What do you mean by that? He asked teasingly, and she smiled. You're an idiot, but you're my idiot, she said, and leaned her head on his shoulder again. He grinned widely. And you're my weirdo, he said and chuckled. They sat there on the rooftop above the empty street, staring at the clouds and at the empty road, waiting. Good. It's nearly ready. Just a little more, QB said to himself as he had nearly completed the runes, circles and seals required for the jutsu. Kakashi appeared walking down from the street, with an Ica Paradise volume in hand, of course. Seeing Kakashi without this book in hand was like seeing Jiraiya not drooling in front of a beautiful woman, which was never, nearly. Naruto was the first one to notice his closet pervert sensei. He grinned widely while he broke apart from Hinata, who was still in her hanged form. She made a disappointed expression when she realized Kakashi had interrupted them. Hinata-chan, let's have some fun, Naruto said, and even though Hinata couldn't see his face for he had turned his head to look at Kakashi, she could tell he had an evil grin on his face. She smiled, knowing this couldn't be good for Kakashi. She didn't hate the man or something, but the tiny prankster part of herself was bouncing around in joy. Kakashi looked up for a moment, having seen to figured at a rooftop by the corner of his eye as he read the book. He seemed to smile under his mask. Oi, Naruto, got a girlfriend I see, he said, making it look more like a statement rather than a question. Naruto frowned. Damn right she is. Too bad we can't tell them now, eh? They'll have to wait for 3 years, he said, and Hinata giggled knowingly. No sensei, she's not my girlfriend, Naruto said and sighed. Kakashi's expression then turned serious. Are you sure? He asked, and Naruto nodded. Oh well, have fun, Kakashi said, his one visible eye forming an upside U, what people knew as his unique smile. Hell we will, Naruto whispered. He reached into his pouch and grabbed a kunai. With little effort, he hanged it into the new volume of Ica Paradise that had recently come up. How he knew it? Well, even if he didn't like it, he and Hinata had passed by a bookstore while walking around, and it was a little hard to avoid that huge poster with a picture of the new book on it. He could tell Kakashi didn't knew about it yet. Oi, sensei, look here, he said, pointing with his finger the new book. Kakashi's eye went wide. What are you doing with this? He asked in disbelief. Naruto grinned evilly. It seemed like Kakashi knew about the new book, but didn't have it yet. I'm making an anti-perverted errand. This is the last copy of this book, and I'm going to destroy it for the sake of purity, Naruto said as he stood up. The book then was set ablaze. Kakashi's eye widened even more. If that's possible, the book he held fell from his hands and his whole body went numb. He fell on his knees, still looking in disbelief at the burning book. No. He screamed in agony as tears started streaming down his eye. How could you? Why must life be so cruel? He asked himself while he sobbed for the loss of the book. He then heard Naruto, along with the girl next to him, laughing their heads off. His tears went dry immediately. How many times had he fallen for that prank? He had lost the count. Damn it, Naruto, stop pulling this on me, I'm going to S before my time, he said, placing his palm on his forehead and shook his head. Both teens stopped laughing. I'm sorry, sensei, but there's nothing better than burning Ica, he said and chuckled. Hinata smiled. It was the first time in years that she had laughed so much. They stood up and left the rooftop, heading for another aimless walk around Konoha, Hinata always in her hanged form now. Naruto hated the fact that he couldn't hold her. But this was going to be fixed, in 3 years by now. Suddenly, a ninja jumped out of nowhere in front of them. They both gasped in surprise and took a step back. The ninja was grinning evilly under his mask. Well, what do we have here? The dropout, and a cute little girl, he said. Naruto cursed under his breath. Hinata could take him down even on her own, but using Juken or anything at all would reveal her identity. He could see people coming out from their windows to look at what was happening. Some were grinning evilly, others worriedly. There were also plenty of girls looking worried from the sides of the street. You have entered the Goken neighborhood. Pay, or else. I will have some fun with the girl, the ninja said, and Hinata gasped, hiding behind Naruto. She too knew she couldn't use her own skills in front of people right now. Naruto glared at him, and if looks could kill, this man could be shredded in pieces. They both remembered this neighborhood. It was at a desolated area of Konoha, where nearly no one went because of this ninja. The Hokage had eventually abandoned any interest about the neighborhood as well, and it was quickly forgotten. The people there lived every day in fear, since no shinobi ever came to help them. They all feared this man, and many didn't even know why. You're welcome to try, Naruto said back, and he could hear many gasps from the audience. The ninja frowned under his half-face mask, which covered the lower area of his face, similar to Kakashi's but with both eyes visible and hair that fell on his face. Am I? The Hokage himself feared me, kid. What makes you think you can defeat me? He said, and it was Naruto's turn to grin evilly. I don't think so. I know so, he said, and his eyes flashed a demonic, blood red with split pupils. He didn't fear to use his own power in front of people. They didn't know he had a bloodline, they could think the demon just rose and gave him power. He mentally told Hinata to go mix with the crowd at the sides of the street, and she quickly did as she was told, mentally wishing him luck as she ran towards a shop with plenty of people outside its door, staring wide-eyed at the scene. So, the Kyuubi brat wants to play. Let's see what you've got, he said, and reached at his back, only to reveal a long, sharp, sly katana. Naruto frowned. He remembered this weapon from the time he trained with Tsunade. It was an Anbu katana. Out ofn to anyone who wonders, think of katana as a samurai longsword. You were an Anbu? He asked the ninja in disbelief. He, HMPED, before replying, I was the Anbu commander. But that Sarutobi full thought my methods were out of question. He thought my opinions were twisted. But look where he is now. And I'm still here, the ninja said, pointing the ground with his katana when he mentioned, look where he is now, and pointing himself with his free hand in the last sentence. Naruto frowned. You'll meet him soon, he said, and launched himself at the ninja with blinding speed. He parried a clawed punch with his katana, but the sword seemed to barely stand the power of the strike. He winced as he struggled to hold the force back. Naruto smirked. He grabbed the katana from the blade and pushed it aside, earning enough space for a powerful kick on the stomach, which landed. The ninja puffed in a cloud of smoke as the kick landed, and Naruto's eyes went wide. Thought it would be that easy. He heard a dark voice from behind him, and he barely managed to dodge a strike straight to the heart. He glared once more at the ninja before standing up, crossing his fingers. He concentrated as much as possible in the current situation so that he wouldn't overwhelm the whole village. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. He shouted, and 20 Naruto clones puffed in existence. The ninja didn't even wince though. Impressive, he said, and all Naruto smirked. Dude, I barely used any chakra. All Naruto said in unison, and at that, the ninja seemed to raise an eyebrow. Well, now I'm intrigued, he said, and in a second, he was fighting Naruto's clones. As the clones kept puffing, Naruto was preparing 2 Razengans at the side. When the last clone was SD in half, the ninja looked at the 2 remaining Narutos, each with a Rasengan in hand. The 4th's technique. You really entertain me, boy. Too bad you won't live long enough to see me having some fun with that girl, he said, smirking evilly under his mask. Naruto frowned. He was fighting hard the urge to unleash all 9 tails and shred him to pieces. But 9 tails were way too high level for such a narrow battlefield, so he just restricted himself in only using the chakra. And to think that before the bloodline, he would lose himself in only 4 tails, what an irony. Now he had full control over the powers of the Kyuubi. His natural inhumanely high chakra capacities were also helping him develop and control the tails far more easily. The problem was, each tail brought a new level of power. With 9 tails, he could bring down an army. The first Naruto charged forward, Rasengan in hand, aiming for the man's chest. He turned to look at the incoming Naruto, and he just raised an eyebrow before jumping high in the air, avoiding the attack completely. Out of nowhere, a second Naruto with a Rasengan appeared, aiming again for his chest. As he was in the air, he couldn't dodge, so he quickly ran in a sequence of hand seals. Alto FN I don't remember the Japanese names, bear with me okay. Kaiten, Phoenix Fire no Jutsu. He exclaimed, raising his hand on his mouth. Small fireballs started launching rapidly towards the oncoming Naruto, who just puffed out of existence when they collided. The man landed, only to dodge in the last second a Rasengan from behind, but before he could dodge again, another Rasengan-handed Naruto charged out of nowhere. Not being able to dodge, he lifted his blade in a meaningless attempt to parry the attack. The Rasengan collided with the blade, which after a few seconds of constant contact, broke into half, allowing Naruto to move forward. Sadly, the Rasengan was out of power and it faded before it could reach the ninja's chest. The ninja smirked as he kicked Naruto hard in the face, earning a good amount of gasps from the crowd. Hinata was staring wide-eyed. She wished she would go there and help her boyfriend, but inwardly, she knew he could do it. He was Naruto, after all. Naruto landed on his feet after taking the kick. He spat on the ground. Is that all? He asked mockingly. The ninja though was just staring at him. I was going to ask the same thing, he said. Naruto didn't react, knowing this game all too well. He couldn't use his advanced techniques, for they would reveal too much. The only strong move he had right now was the Rasengan, but he couldn't really hit him for the man seemed to be an expert in dodging. He frowned but then, something clicked in his mind. He formed his trademark seal to create another pack of 20 Narutos. They all charged towards the ninja, who kept puffing them out of existence with every passing second. When he was finished, he turned to look at the boy who was just standing there, smirking. He raised an eyebrow, but then the ground under his feet erupted, revealing two hands who caught his ankles before he could even flinch. The Naruto who was standing in front of him puffed away. His eyes went wide. He tried to move, but Naruto's enhanced power was far greater. He turned his head around to see a smirking Naruto, Rasengan in hand. Soon afterwards, his world went black. Naruto cleaned his hands as if the ninja was nothing, which he wasn't. It looked like all this years he relied on reputation and fear to command, instead of being really powerful. He was strong, but not enough. He grinned remembering what he had said to him before the Rasengan made contact with the ninja's back. Tell Sarutobi-Oji-san I said hello. No wait, you can't, for you're going down, really down, he had said before opening a hole in the man's back. He then realized the people around him were cheering and clapping happily. At least, the girls seemed to do so. All the adults were smirking or looking at him worriedly. Kids started running towards him and hugged him tightly. Thank you. They were all exclaiming. He grinned widely while rubbing the back of his head. Nah, it was nothing, he said, waving his hands defensively. He then heard a loud rumble at the back of his head. Kits. We have to go, now. They both heard the demon shouting in their heads. Naruto looked over the crowd to see Hinata nodding. He nodded to her and they both jumped away at the rooftops, heading away at top speed. When they stopped, they sat down and waited. Kyubi rose once more. All right, the jutsu is ready. Listen up. What will leave this place is not our body, but our mind. Right now, you don't have your own mind, yet you have it. It is like your future mind has taken over the one you had before. When we leave, your previous mind will regain control, and this boss and minds won't remember a thing. Now, what will happen next is completely unknown to me. I just know your minds will return to your future boss with all the memories and the following. Come on, there's no time to waste. We have spent enough in the past already. The demon said and they nodded. They closed their eyes, and concentrated. They soon found themselves in a rather dark, gloomy chamber. Looking around, they noticed plenty of circles, runes and seals spread all around the floor. Kyubi appeared in its human form, a tall man in a black cloak, hair red with equally red eyes, grinning and revealing his sharp canines. He motioned them to stand in the middle. They stood there, looking at each other. The demon then flashed in their minds what they had to do, and they nodded. Soon, they both flied through a large sequence of hand seals. When they finished, they clapped their hands with each other and held on them. Forbidden technique. Dual time travel, they both exclaimed in unison. They smiled at each other as a white flash blinded their vision. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.